Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the webinar, Don't Be the Next Victim, Protect Your Information. My name is Lisa Coram, and I'm the Senior Financial Wellness Educator here with Desert Financial. And as you can see, I have two guests with me today, but before we get into official introductions, I always like to start these webinars by saying our mission, and our mission is sharing success. And we do that in a variety of different ways. But one of the ways we share success is by providing tools and information to support financial education, to empower not only our members, our team, and our community to take charge of financial well-being. And so with that, you may notice that our setup is a little different today. We are not in the square TV boxes. We are actually live streaming from a central location. And so this will not be a typical webinar. You won't see slides. Instead, the intent is to have more of a conversation about how you can protect your information against fraud. So with that said, I'm going to introduce today's guests. I have John Stream with me, and he is from our subsidiary SwitchThink. He is the Chief Information Security Officer. And then I have Christopher Nelson, who is the Director of Fraud Prevention with Desert Financial. So I'm going to open it up. I'm going to start with John first. John, share a little bit of your background with our audience today.
Sure. Hey, thanks for having me, and thanks for everybody for joining. We're going to try to make this as exciting as it can be. Fraud is on the top of mind. Hacking is on the top of everybody's mind. And I'm here today with Chris and Lisa to help merge these two, to help understand where does one end and where does the other begin. My background is in IT through systems engineering and network engineering and things like that. About 6 or 7 years ago, I moved into the security space to give a dedicated focus to just cyber type of events and how can we best prepare the organization as well as best prepare our members to combat the various types of fraud. And I'm here today to help hopefully convey how both of these attack methods are similar and how you can learn things through this webinar to help both yourself in the office and in your personal life.
Thank you, John. And next, Christopher, share a little bit about your background with the audience.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Thanks for joining. My background, most of my career has actually been in the fraud space. The past 8 or 9 years with credit unions, the financial industry. Just like John said, there's a significant amount of crossover that happens from the IT space to the fraud space. And a lot of it goes hand in hand. So I'm excited to have the conversation with everybody on what you can do to protect yourself and really protect your financial well-being as well. A lot of the fraud gets fairly complex, but there are a lot of really easy ways to identify it and ensure that you don't get scammed by fraudsters.
Yeah, and one of the great things, and one of the things that we're going to cover today is help you identify what those common tactics are, because to us, the motive is the only thing that's different. They're trying to either hack into the system using phishing, smishing, texting, phone calls, or they're trying to hack into your bank account to do the same sorts of things. So the things that we're going to cover today, you're going to be able to be in tune with some of those attack vectors and understand, are they trying to hack me because I'm an employee of a credit union, or are they trying to hack me because I have a bank account with some money in it? And we'll touch on everything today through the conversation.
So with that said, we're still going to operate in a little bit of the same manner, where if you have questions or something pops into your mind that you want to ask Chris and John, please go ahead and put those questions into the chat. I will have Alexandria, who is off to the side, sending me those questions. We will address those questions at the end of the webinar. But with that said, my first question, I think, is going to be a question for each of you. I will start with Chris this time. And Chris, can you share the common methods of attack versus the difference in goals that you might see on the fraud side? And then John will get to the system side.
Yeah, so there's really a lot of ways. John touched on a lot of them, just a few seconds ago. The phishing, the smishing, sending emails, hoping you click on a link, sending you a text message. They spoof phone numbers. You might think you're getting a call from your financial institution or a text from your financial institution. So those are just some of the ways. Social media, romance scams, we call them. They create a relationship. And really the intent there a lot of times is to gain your trust, get your personal information, be able to infiltrate sometimes your email. And that essentially can allow them to get your personal information, get into bank accounts. And at that point, their motive is to take money. And really on John's side, he'll talk about, sometimes the difference is, getting into different systems and getting access to other information. So I think that's really the big difference, but common goal throughout. And how do we stop these individuals from gaining access?
All right. So right now we're talking about gaining access to information. I'm going to transition it to you, John, to kind of talk a little bit about that system piece.
Sure. It all starts, one of the questions that was presented to us before leading into this was, what do they do with the information? Every time there's a large data breach, where a large organization, it could be a healthcare provider or a law office or a telecom provider, your Verizon or T-Mobile. But anytime those data breaches occur, they're aggregating massive amounts of information about each of us as consumers, each of us as people, regardless of what institution we choose to bank with or choose to partner with. But with that information, they're able to build a dossier or a folder about each of us, about what our tendencies are, about what products we use, about where we spend our money, to help better target them to us. So, and in some cases, they get lucky. You may get a text message that says, we're from Chase or we're from Desert Financial, and maybe you are a member of Desert Financial when this happens. But what they're really doing is getting lucky. They're targeting only those messages to phone numbers within our area code. There's a high probability that they're going to get a member of one of ours with those text messages. That certainly doesn't mean that the fault originated from within our walls, because I can assure you that it is not. But it's more of a spray and pray tactic where they blast out thousands or tens of thousands of text messages to all kinds of people, hoping that one triggers. What's really common, what I've seen a lot on my personal phone, are the toll road. You've passed through a toll booth and you didn't pay your fine. All of those are means to scare the person, to get them to let down their guard, to open up their personal information to this particular attacker. And getting access to your information and getting access to your system is going to determine which way they want to pivot. Do they want to pivot into a security system? Do they want to try to get into the credit union once they learn maybe where you're employed? Or do they want to pivot into your bank account? Because at the end of the day, they're both going to lead to cash for these attackers. And so what we can do is help educate really on what to identify as those suspicious activities, those things to be looking out for, so that you don't either let them into your personal life or into your work life.
So John, in talking, it's funny you mentioned the toll scenario, because that's been popping up quite a bit. And, with us living in Arizona, it's not like we have to pay a toll. So I know one of the questions was, how do you identify when a scam is a scam, right? If you know that you don't live in a place where you have to pay a toll, then that should automatically trigger, hey, this is a scam.
Sure.
To transition a little bit and talk a little bit about the training. What does the training as far as security awareness look like with regard to, whether it's fraud or being, scammed? What does that look like?
For us at the credit union, we have regulations that require us to demonstrate that we educate our staff around suspicious activities. So what we do is send phishing emails. If you have a job in a workforce that sends and receives emails, there's a strong probability you're probably, being phished or test phished through your organization. We certainly do that here with the goal of building muscle memory and building a repeatable cadence and a repeatable visual identification of what looks bad versus what looks good, so that when you do get something that's out of the ordinary, you're automatically inclined to say, this ain't right, versus, oh my gosh, I better do something and act. We really want to raise that awareness to get folks to pause and question the motivation of the person behind the email. If you know, in some of those tactics that we do are based on what the attackers will do to us as well. We want to raise awareness. We want to raise the blood pressure, if you will. We want to get the person on the other end of that email a little bit worried about what they just got, so that we can help educate them, so that when we say, hey, when your blood pressure rises and you get an email that looks like I must act today, that's when you need to kind of step back away from the keyboard and take a pause and say, who is this person that's sending this? Does this really affect me? Do I normally get these kinds of emails? By doing so, you create friction on that attacker. You want to slow them down so that you can think a little bit more clearly about what you're receiving. Because the sad fact is, these phishing emails and these text messages and these ways that they're throwing information at us are meant to scare us, and they're very, very effective. We've seen it from all reaches of the organizations, and all types of organizations fall victim to these sorts of things. So really our intent of the training and security awareness, what we instruct is follow some best practices. Within SwitchSync, we call it good compliance hygiene. What does good compliance hygiene mean? It means being suspicious when your text message starts blowing up, or you start getting emails from other banks, or you get an email that says that your checking account has been linked to another account when it probably hasn't been. We want to educate you on those things. We want to give you the best practices on how to protect your usernames and passwords, because that's also a way that they're going to try to infiltrate your systems. Is if we want to help make sure that you know that you should protect your password the same way that you protect your social security number. We stopped writing socials on checks at the grocery store, 30, 40 years ago. We certainly don't want to give anybody our password. That is the key to this system. But because of that, we've started to build more things on top. Multi-factor authentication. We start texting you a number when you log into the system, so that we can double verify that my phone is never five inches away from my hand. When I get a text message, I know that something is happening on my account. We want to make sure that that also extends into all of the folks that are logging into our systems. So by giving folks the basics of the best practices of protect your password, don't give it to anybody. Keep a text message for your multi-factor authentication, because you're likely going to be in control of your phone. Those are all things that create friction for the attackers and slow them down, so that they don't have free reign to just waltz right into your bank account or waltz right into our company when we least expect them.
That sounds good. And it sounds easy enough, right? Slow down. Make sure that you're signing up with and I always trip this up, multi-authenticator authentication. Did I get that right?
Multi-factor authentication.
Multi-factor, see?
Yep.
But Chris, I'm assuming that looks a little different on your end. Is it the same? Are the best practices the same?
A lot of it's 100% the same. Multi-factor authentication, I suggest that for everybody, for everything. I can even tell you, doing what I do for a living, I have one credit card that I use for higher risk transactions. Like at a restaurant, if I give it to somebody and they walk away with it, 100% of the transactions, I'll get a text message on what transaction just occurred. So implementing those, maybe not to that length, is crucial to understanding what's going on. There's a ton of resources out there. Most financial institutions, I know we have one here, Desert Financial, on our website, a lot of resources on how to protect yourself. Most banks and credit unions will have that as well, NCUA, FDIC. We do a lot of awareness campaigns with our members based on what's happening in the world today from fraud. We send out emails, we use social media campaigns, all of those things. But going back to John's point on, strong passwords, very simple. Don't reuse the same password for every single system you're on. When you get a call, don't give away a bunch of personal information. When Desert Financial or your financialist calls you, they're never going to ask for your personal information, your username, your password, the code that we just sent. If somebody's asking for that, 100% of the time it's a fraudster. So a lot of very similar things, from MFAs, password protection, just paying attention to what's in the email. There's a lot of different scams lottery scams, government scams, you're going to get all this money. If it seems too good to be true, it probably is. And be very, very careful what you're doing. And, if you have questions, just pick up the phone and call your financial institution. There's fraud teams there to help you and support you through this, and can give you a lot of good insight on what you should or shouldn't do. Yep.
So a couple of different things. I know, Chris, you talked about resources, and, John, you talked about the training that we receive as credit union employees. But if you're in a situation where, maybe you're a student, or maybe you're retired, right, and you don't have kind of access to those resources, that the Federal Trade Commission is a good resources. They're always talking about different types of scams that are circulating. And so I definitely wanted to put that out there. And, everyone typically has a bank account. And so if you're getting a text, right, what I heard you say, Chris, is being able to pick up the phone and call and question if, they're unsure. So I'm gonna kind of keep with you, Chris,
Yeah.
and have you talk about how these attacks commonly start.
Yeah, a significant amount of these either are going to start through an email that you get, something you maybe post online, somebody's going to send you a message. And really what happens in these, particularly when we talk about the romance scams, is somebody befriends you, and sometimes these take a long period of time. They gain your trust. They offer big returns on investments. One of the things that I'll share is be very, very skeptical of anything having to do with crypto and investments that way. Always talk to a professional at your financial institution. They can guide you on all of these things. We see a lot of times folks engaging with people they've never met, and they engage over the phone or via email or social media, and ultimately becomes friends. They trust them and eventually give away their money. So it's really just identifying those odd things that happen and really understanding what's happening potentially in the background. As much as you want to trust these people and be involved with what's going on, I said earlier, if it's too good to be true, it probably is. And it even goes to, if you get a call you think's from your bank, it might look like your bank. If they're asking information, hang up, call your bank directly. And they'll be able to tell you, yes, it was us, no, it wasn't us. But just be careful with the information that you share with individuals that you don't know, don't trust, because a lot of times they are just fishing for information. And ultimately, a lot of times when people see people fall for these scams and can lose significant amounts of money.
I think the other piece of that is a gut check that you get, right? When you get those messages, I think instinctively we want to take action, but I heard you say, John and Chris, to kind of slow down and think about that, right? But I think that gut check is important, right? How do you know when something is off? What outside of that gut check, what does that look like?
I think for us, especially for Chris and I think we live and breathe it every single day. So our radar is always on for these types of things. Like, of course, that's fraud. We say it very natively and instinctively. I think that part of our mission here is to share this information with the wider audience, so that the wider audience learns about these things. We talk about security awareness training in information security, and I always try to remind folks, like, make sure that you tell your extended relatives, make sure that you tell your aunts and your uncles and your grandparents and your children who are also consumers and have bank accounts and have money and have access to these things, because the farther we spread this information, the better off and the stronger we're all going to be. And then what's really kind of worrisome is, as helpful union folks are going to be, as helpful as we are and as diligently as we train our staff to be service oriented, those attackers are also very, very motivated and trained to extract that information from you. So they will become forceful and belligerent if you start to put up resistance. So if you find that somebody that you're interacting with is really trying to be they're kind of rude in the way that they're asking for this information. That should be a very, very strong red flag that the person on the other end doesn't have your best interest in mind. Because for us, we're going to be helpful and service oriented, but we're not going to ask you for that kind of information. We already have it. But that attacker on the other end is going to be forceful and helpful, but also very, very highly skilled and highly trained to extract that information out of you. You are the target with respect to them. So I guess once you kind of flip your lens a little bit to understand, okay, I'm going to put myself in the attacker's shoes, things become really clear and really easy to understand. And it all just becomes from awareness and information sharing.
Yeah, the fear tactic as well. Get scared that, Timmy's in jail and we need this money to get him out. When you should just pick up the phone and call Timmy's parents and see where he is. So there's a lot of that. And, when you talk about gut instinct and gut feeling, if the IRS calls you, which they won't ever do, they send all communication via US mail. But when they ask somebody to pay back taxes in the form of Target gift cards, that should give you a real situation to take pause and say, there's no way the federal government would ask me for Target gift cards, to pay my taxes, which I just filed 2 weeks ago, right? So, a lot of it is just really thinking through, to your point, John, what's happening and say, is this even legitimate from a logical perspective? Because a lot of times it's not.
Yeah, and they will use whatever means at their disposal that they can. They'll target you with open enrollment during open enrollment period. They'll target you with tax scams during tax period. They'll target you with Christmas scams during Christmas periods. They know what folks are thinking about and how they're thinking about them, and so they run their cycle just like anything else. And that's also a mindset shift to just stay alert, to say like, hey, if something's big is going on in the world, I should probably be on alert for those sorts of things affecting me. Even when logic tells me that the government is never going to ask for Target gift cards, they may know that you're shopping for gift cards. Who knows?
Yeah, I think we saw that recently with the fires in LA. I think every time I saw something on the news on how to donate, there was a disclaimer: make sure before you donate, make sure it's a valid organization, because the fraudsters exploit all of that every single time that something happens.
So I'd like to turn the table a little bit and kind of talk about moving from preventative measures and really focusing on, what do you do if you become a victim of fraud, or if your information has landed in the wrong hands? What does that look like? I will start with you, John.
I'll say first thing is being true to yourself. I would say is the first step, is to not take a hard look in the mirror and ask yourself how that had happened, but acknowledge that it did happen. Because once you kind of put down your pride and you understand that, like, oh, I can't believe they got me for 5,000 or 10,000 or even worse in some cases. Once you kind of accepted that this fraud has occurred to you, that somebody has victimized you as a person, now you can begin to work with your Chris's of the world. You can contact your financial institution and they can work on some instruments to maybe potentially claw that money back. You can also contact law enforcement. The FBI has a division inside their walls to help bring that information out, so that if you are sharing money with somebody, or you've wired somebody $10,000 out of your home equity account or something, the federal government can step in and pull that money back and potentially get you your returns. So really my first thing is, once you do that and you recognize that fraud has occurred on your account, raise the flag, because this shouldn't be over just because you may be out a couple of hundred or a couple of $1,000s. Time is of the essence, and the sooner that you take action, the sooner that you contact the proper authorities. Start with your credit union, start with your bank. They'll know where to go next. They'll know who to contact. There is a chance that you can get your money returned to you. In some cases, it's a strong chance. Other cases, it's not, depending on where that money goes. But there are instruments out there on the financial services side to stop the bleeding, if you will, and to make sure that we can do things like change your account numbers and freeze your credit. Like, there's a lot of activities that we can do to stop that attacker from getting unfettered access to your money. But that would be from a fraud perspective. That's where I would go. Is like, it happened, great. what can we do about it? And I would say the same thing happens on the information security side within the corporation. You know, events occur all the time. How are you going to respond to those things when they do occur? So we have incident response playbooks. We practice what happens in the event an attacker gets into the network. But all of those start with the fact that something happened. We must act on it. What are we going to do? We can't just pull the hoodie over our head and hide in the shadows. We've got to address this thing head on. And that's where the blend again comes in.
Awesome, thank you. Chris, what do you want to add?
There's really not much to add there. You know, I completely understand when it happens, it's embarrassing. You look at yourself and go, I don't even know if I want to share that, but you know, John said it perfectly. Time is of the essence. We have mechanisms. We have partnership with other financial institutions. You know, we have a large fraud team here at Desert Financial who works day in, day out with fraud teams at other institutions. And there are a lot of mechanisms to try to claw that money back. We're quite successful. We're not always successful. The sooner we know, the more successful we are. But yeah, it's really about letting us know. We'll immediately go to work. We're here to help you and help educate and train folks on how to prevent it. But when it does happen, let us know. We'll immediately get to work to try to do what we can to get as much back as we possibly can.
Now, I know, thank you. I know John talked about freezing your credit. And I know that there was a question, you know, that came up about, you know, how long you should unfreeze your credit if you're having loan checks or credit checks. I want to kind of first start and say that freezing your credit is a preventative method that you can take. I've frozen my credit across all 3 credit bureaus and recently had to reopen the credit freeze for a creditor or vendor to access that information. And I did it for an hour. So you don't have to leave it open for very long. You can leave it, you know, open for an hour time frame. You could leave it open for longer, but knowing that there are people out there that are trying to get access to that information and get access to money, I do not leave it open very long.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I actually just last week had to open mine up. They asked me to do a 24-hour lift on 2 of the 3, which is what I did. And then I ensured, you know, 24 hours later that it was frozen again. The big point on there is, you know, if you're getting a mortgage for a home, work with your lender. Say, all right, I'll unfreeze it. How long do I need to keep it unfrozen? Because I do know they're going to check multiple times. But you can also say, you know, call me when you're going to check it. I'll unfreeze it. I'm putting the freeze back on. So there's a lot of different things you can do. But, you know, talk to whoever you're working with from your lender, and they'll be able to advise specifically what you should do in that case.
Good point. Good point. Okay, so I think we actually can transition into some questions from the audience. And out of curiosity, I'll kind of start. You talked a little bit about the likelihood of having funds returned after you've been impacted by fraud. You know, if you had to measure that out or kind of put that on a 50-30, what scale would you put that?
So it really depends. I talked a little bit about crypto earlier. When you not invest, you know, you can invest in crypto. I would absolutely work with somebody in wealth management or, you know, with your financial institution on how to do that properly. Crypto is more difficult. I can say it is very, very rare once that goes into a crypto account or a crypto ATM that is owned by somebody else, meaning they've coerced you to put it into their account. That never comes back. You know, when it's check fraud, when it's something via ACH, so something you did online, a wire to another bank, the probability is much higher with those. When it's cash, it's 0, because, you know, if you give somebody a whole bunch of cash and off they go with it. We don't get that back, short of somebody being arrested and going through the court system. So it really depends on how the fraud occurred and what path it took on the success rate.
Yeah, I think if I recall back from the FBI, they have a recovery asset team that handles, bringing that money back to the victim. I think that they say they're in the 60 to 80% effectiveness range, and they tout there's on the every year the FBI produces their yearly report on fraud. And a big section of that is talking about the different case studies that they have of getting people return money, where there's email fraud and the title company email has been intercepted, and the victim wires money to an adjacent account that's not controlled by the lender. Oftentimes they're able to get that money back. Don't underestimate the power of the federal government to get after that money, whether that's your own money if you're defrauding the IRS, or if there's fraud going on. They do have means to get into systems to get that money back. So the FBI touts a very high success rate. The biggest impediment there is taking that first step and admitting that you were compromised, admitting that you had fraud done to you, and turning it over to the authorities to see what they can do.
Yeah, and I think it's important because I did see a question come through on, how do banks protect us and monitor these transactions? So there are a lot of systems running in the background on every time you swipe your card, every time you purchase something online. There are thresholds, there's flags, there's human beings looking at all of that. And the good thing is all financial institutions have some sort of system that do that. So when it does happen, there are lots of times where we get, we'll hear that fraud has occurred from our member, and we can see where it went. We contact Bank of America, and they say, yep, we knew it was fraud, so we stopped it. We're going to return that money immediately. So lots of systems working in the background to monitor all of this.
And what I heard you both say is that time is of the essence. So as soon as you find out that your information or your card number or whatever the case may be has been impacted, reach out immediately.
Yep.
And so when we say reach out, I know we mentioned financial institution, but what other entities, is that the local police?
I don't know if I would go to the local police. Certainly not a 911 call. IC3.gov is the centralized information, gateway into reporting fraud against you as a person. That gets into the FBI system, and then it spiders off. And if it then needs to go to local authorities, it can. If they'll naturally contact Phoenix PD or Mesa PD or wherever you are. If it's something that's happening on the ground. But I would definitely start there. Definitely call Chris at the credit union. Call your fraud team. Call the number on the back of your credit card. Be the initiator to call that number. Don't receive a call from a fraudster. Don't accept that call to say, hey, in some cases, those folks that are calling you want you to believe that they're, part of the team. And in a lot of cases, they're not. So it's always best to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to hang up with you and I'm going to call you back at the number that I see on the back of my card or the number that's published online. But be the initiator of that conversation and take action. Be the aggressor. Be the one that's adding the friction to the transaction.
Yeah, and the fraud team will guide you as well. We'll say, okay, we're going to get to work on this. File with IC3. If we feel like it needs to go to local law enforcement, hey, file a police report with your local, wherever you live, and we'll help with all of the guidance on what to do with that.
So our chat box has been a little quiet, which always kind of signals, oh, it looks like we have a couple of questions. And so I'm gonna give that a moment. But there are always new types of fraud. And I know in the news we've heard lately about AI fraud. How do you combat against AI fraud?
Yeah, we've touched on it multiple times. I would say the first two big things, or three for me, are multi-factor authentication, strong passwords that you're not using over and over on every different system, and really utilizing the credit freeze. It's very difficult to run credit when your credit is frozen. It's impossible. So, those are really three big things. Then the fourth one is, even if you feel like it's an AI call, don't stay on it and share a lot, because a lot of times what they're looking for is biometrics. So don't show your personal information, any codes you got, just hang up.
Yeah, but I'll say it from the attacker side, don't believe who's calling you as a real person. Some of the voice AI are pretty sophisticated, and they're getting really good at that. I talked about it earlier. All of these breaches, whether it's a doctor's office or a law office or a financial institution or your cell phone provider, all lead to large data stores of information that you can train your AI model to say, I want to target folks in Phoenix that work for a credit union that have Verizon phones, and target them with a specific text message. Those AI tools are going to be very, very good at identifying very, very specific criteria to target people. So the same way that you may get marketed from Nike or from whomever, they're going to market you, but with a fraud sort of angle. So just know that the information that they have on you is probably more than you think, and they're not using it for good. So again, be very, very skeptical, and don't be afraid to delete a message, and certainly don't be afraid to pick up the phone and call that person back or call that financial institution back, because now you're taking back control and pulling it out of their hands.
So 2 questions have come in. The first question, could you address Bitcoin fraud? I received a text invoice for a purchase of $499.99 in Bitcoin with a phone number to call if I didn't authorize it. I ignored it, but hope other people can be made aware.
Sure. I mean, you can get a PayPal invoice. They're going to email you fake invoices. They're going to tell you that your McAfee antivirus has expired and that you need to contact them. And they may even send you a PDF with an ACH number or somewhere to mail a check. They're going to hit you from all sides in trying to hope that they trigger something that gets you to act. But if you didn't make any Bitcoin transactions, think it's just a spray and pray that you got that message along with 5,000 other people at that same time. And so if it wasn't you, my recommendation is just delete it. I get so much garbage on my cell phone that I don't even want the phone to ring half the time, because I don't trust who's actually trying to give me a call. But dump those messages. If it doesn't apply to you, then it probably doesn't apply to you.
And so I know Bitcoin was a little bit different, but what about some of your common carriers or vendors like the post office or Amazon, right? Those are frequent. Do you think it's advisable or beneficial to report those back to that vendor?
I'd say yes, and sometimes no. It depends on what you think they're going to do. At least in the corporate space, when you report a suspicious email to the information security team, we're going to act on it, and we're going to let you know the disposition of that email. Is it just a spam email? Or we may thank you and appreciate you for reporting a legitimate phishing email to us, because we can then take action on it and look for similar messages across all the employee base. With respect to Amazon and PayPal and some of those other things, do they really care? I don't know. I don't think so. But if you think back to the basics that we educate you on, is the sender actually Amazon.com? Is the button that you're trying to click actually going to Amazon.com? Is it really going to PayPal? Or is it going to something that may have PayPal or Amazon in the word, but is going to some alternate website? So you just use some basic mouse skills and email observing skills to see, like, who is the real sender? What action are they trying to get me to do? Are they trying to get me to call a number? Are they trying to get me to enter my credit card information? Are they trying to get me to click a link? All modern browsers and all of your phones can help uncover that information if you take just the quick 2 seconds to pause and hover over the link and investigate and be a little bit, scrutinize that email, scrutinize that text message. Do I really have a PayPal transaction pending? Like, I don't even use PayPal. Then by all means, ignore it. Certainly don't sign up for PayPal wondering why you've got fraud on your account, because that's not a good thing to do.
The second question, and I think I can address this as well, is I would like to check my credit card. I would like to check my credit before I freeze them. How do I do that? So I'll answer that. The simplest way to do that is through annualcreditreport.com. It's the same website that we tell our members to go through when they are checking their credit report. My recommendation would be to check all 3 credit bureaus so that you know that the information is consistent across all 3 credit bureaus. And we'll provide you with a resource list that will have that resource listed. The other is, and I'm not sure, it says just in case there are cards there that I should close, etc. So, I mean, you know, if I'm understanding this correctly, and there are cards on your credit report that you need to close, you want to make sure that you do so with care. And what I mean by that is if you have a credit card that is, let's say 11, 12 years old, it's been opened, you don't have a balance on it, closing that account could impact your credit score. So that's why I say kind of do that with care, or, think about closing that. But if it's a card that's fraudulent, then yes, you want to make sure that you get in contact with the credit bureaus and have them remove that information or work with them to remove that.
And if I may, I mean, Chris brought up a risk tolerance, risk practice for high risk credit cards. If you've got a long-term credit card that you want to keep on your credit history for good credit scoring, stick that card in the drawer, keep it open. If it's got 0 balance, stick it in a drawer and put a transaction alert on all of the transactions so that anytime something does happen to that card, you're aware of it immediately and you can contact that credit provider. Now you've got a risk posture that's like, hey, I want to keep the card open because I want my credit score to go up. But I also am not going to use it because my percentage or my APR is 22 or 23%. Cool, stick it in the drawer. Don't use it. Don't use it for any purchases, but put some transaction alerts on it. And that way, anytime something does hit that card, you're going to know about it right in advance.
Yeah, and a lot of cards now you can get in their mobile app and just lock the card, so it can't be used.
They're even better.
There you go. We have another question. It says, please discuss what constitutes a strong password and ideas for creating them.
I'll start. Strong passwords are long passwords. I think back in the day, we talked about, really complex strings of numbers and characters and symbols, and it has to be 15 characters long, and it has to be a mix of things. That guidance is still true, and it's still a good practice. But what we try to do nowadays is make things a little bit simpler. I like using passphrases, so 3 random words with some spaces and some numbers and some characters. And those 3 words could be anything that you see around the house or something that maybe affects you personally. A vacation, a song, a lyric, a band, you name it. It could be any sort of random thing. What's out there and what has become more predominant, especially as we have, if we follow the guidance of not reusing passwords across multiple systems, how are we going to manage all of these passwords? We here at the credit union use an enterprise password manager solution that comes with a personal password manager as well that you can then share with your family. So using a password manager like 1Password or Bitwarden or some of these other ones that are out there allow you to keep your passwords on your person all the time. They'll work in your browser, they work on your phone, they work on any other phone or any other computer that you're going to sign into, and you can follow those passwords, or those passwords will follow you everywhere you go. And you'll never need to know what those passwords are. It'll automatically create a strong password for you. It could be 20 characters, and you're never going to see what those numbers or letters are because the password manager is always going to pre-fill those websites or those apps for you. So a good strong password, keep it long, keep it random, and don't reuse it. And then once you're in that system, put your multi-factor on. Trigger a SMS text alert when you do sign into those systems. And then you're assured that unless there's something that catastrophic happens to that vendor where somehow their password database has been compromised, you're pretty assured that your account your account's going to be good, while the other ones, well, we're not going to talk about those, but at least you can be assured that yours is.
I love my password manager, especially when it comes to setting up new passwords. All you need to do is open it and just hit the
Update it, and it's
button
done.
and it's done. Okay, so we are coming to the end of our webinar, and I have the same question for both of you. What, if someone joined us late, or they're just kind of, stepping into the webinar, what is the number one takeaway from today's discussion? And I'll ask that of each of you, and we'll start with Chris.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is, for me, that I'm hoping people are taking away is understanding all the tools and resources that are out there, the MFAs, the credit freezes, John just talked about the passwords, putting that into practice. Those simple little things, although they don't guarantee that something's not going to happen, will impact the likelihood significantly. And then the other big thing is, if something doesn't feel right, it's probably not. Pick up the phone, contact your financial institution, talk to somebody on the fraud team or whoever, and they can absolutely help guide you through if something's real, not real, and how to actually respond if something does happen. So those are, for me, what I'm hoping really everybody takes away from this.
Thank you, Chris.
For me, I would say become a security evangelist. If you understand and some of the things that we talked about today are second nature to you, and you're like, oh, we already know that, I already got MFA on all my stuff. Cool, go spread the word. We can lessen the impact of all of these fraud cases across our communities at large if we share what we know. If we're out there talking about password managers, or we're talking about multi-factor, and we're talking to our families about it. We didn't really get too specific in elder crime and crimes against the elderly here, but that's a huge problem. Not only do they usually have a life savings that they're investing in or that they're keeping in their savings accounts, but they're also highly targeted by attackers. And the more that we can spread what we know to those folks that are older than us, and as well as those folks that are younger than us, your nieces, your nephews, your children, get everybody on board and understanding what these attackers are trying to do. Because at that point, once we've raised the awareness, the success rate of those attackers are going to go down, and they're going to go find something else to do with their time, because the success rate of what they're doing is going to decrease the more we're all aware of what we're doing. And so anything that you hear that resonates with you, share that with somebody else. That's my big takeaway from today.
Awesome. I want to say thank you to both of you for sharing your areas of expertise with the audience today. I always walk away with a couple of things that I'm gonna kind of update, learn, relearn. For those of you who are in the audience, you will receive a copy of this recording. You will also receive a resource list that we talked about earlier. There's a survey that we would love for you to take and provide feedback. As soon as this webinar ends, you'll be able to close and the survey should pop up. And if not, then you'll receive a follow-up email from me with all 3 items. So I want to say thank you for attending this webinar, and I hope to see you on a future webinar. Thank you.
Thank you.